Hello, it's your boy VG Time back again with another video. Episode 2, in fact, of the new series, Why Was It Banned, Limited, or Errata'd? At the end of episode 1, I spoke about how a lot of people were screaming for something to be done about chain attack Trunks into Bobbity. But there was another issue on the horizon, one that I believe top level players do about, but the casual players not so much so. So we're just going to get into this leader and talk about him. So here he is, Frieza, back card, Bionic Strike, Mecha Frieza. When you activate an extra card, you may choose one card in your life added to your hand. If you do, reduce the energy cost of the extra card by 1 for the duration of the turn. And if this card is reduces the energy cost of that extra card by less than 1, you may activate the card without paying a specified cost. It woke at 4 less life, you got to draw 2, and on the backside, it reduced the cost by 2 by taking a life. In the same situation, if it costs less than 2, it got to be free. And when it attacks, you drew a card. Now, this permanent was not once per turn or anything like that, right? So as long as you had the extra cards to use, you could keep taking life and keep taking advantage of those extra cards' abilities. This leader was powerful when it came out. It was in set 2.5, which was Draft Box 1. The whole purpose of buying Draft Box 1 was to get a chance of getting this Mecha Frieza leader. When it came out, it was very powerful, but it was limited by the card pool. You had to play a lot of really junky cards in your deck to take full advantage of it, but you were still probably the best 3-color good stuff leader. The only competition that had at 3-color good stuff was Ginyu. That's another leader that could take his own life and also had access to Cold Bloodlust, which was the 3rd color. Like, you didn't even care about anything else but Cold Bloodlust and yellow. And Mecha Frieza just did it better. Now, you have to understand how the game worked back then. Like, this leader now would still be super powerful and super broken, but you didn't have decks awakening on turn 2 or turn 1 like you do now. No other deck did what he did. Set 1, set 2 format was a whole bunch of board building and resource management and whittling away against the opponent's board until it was time to go in and try to win the game. The exceptions were, of course, Vegeta was the lone exception, and then androids to a certain extent since it was able to awaken at 6. Ginyu, though he was self-awakening, played the same game as Soul Striker or any other deck, which was a blue-green good stuff deck. So to give you the example of a deck that was like talking about, we look at this list from George Machado over on the Pro Play Games YouTube channel. So we see here we have Encouraging Presence Banaka. This card was key to it because you were able to take a life and draw a card off of it to give your leader double strike. Then you also had Objection, which is a card that is banned right now. Objection was super key because normally Objection was a 2-costed card that was a -1 from hand, but in this deck, Objection was a 1-costed card that was a break even because you took the life, you tapped the energy, and then you took and put a card into energy. Your deck was primarily blue because sometimes you were able to Objection twice. That's when it got out of hand, right? So this deck was able to not only take a chance at awakening on turn 1 or turn 1.5, meaning the opponent's turn, but it also had the ability to ramp up to 2 to 3 energy before your opponent even got a chance to go. That meant that you were able to play bombs like this Gohan, this Kale. You were able to get to your Barrises to pop. You had your 5-drop Gon tanks, all turn or 2 earlier than your opponent, and that gave you the advantage you needed. The downside, though, is that you were taking a lot of life to the point where the aggro decks were sometimes able to take advantage of you. Something happened when you came to set 3. And that something happening was Planet Vegeta. Planet Vegeta was released. It was meant to be used for the Grade 8 archetype that was coming out that set. You play it, you search your deck for a 4-cost Select Saiyan card, and then you add it to your hand. Now, when you combine it with Encouraging Presence Banaka and a suite of Saiyans, you had 2 cards that were able to take a life and get you a card from your deck for free. So now you almost guaranteed the awakening. The other card that was printed was another card that eventually got banned, Unwavering Solidarity Shigesh. Shigesh skill was simple. If you're at 4 or less life, your leader was yellow. When you combo this card, you got to play a 3-cost or less Saiyan from your hand, and it became a 10k combo. This was built up to be based around the explosive spirit Son Goku that you see played in Kid Goku, and you would just basically Shigesh Kid Goku, which then gave you the ability to out attacks in general. So it made yellow very scary in that aspect. But that was not how the Mecha Frieza players were using it. So the first example of what people were doing was Mecha Frieza GT. So you might be wondering, okay, how does this deck work? I couldn't find like a laid out deck list, but basically the premises was you ran Monaka playing Vegeta and you dug for Shugeshes. You could then swing with your leader, draw a card, Shugesh, into the 3-drop Goku that becomes a 5 when it's on the table. Then once you do that, you could then evolve this 6-drop Goku on top of it, and then you got to swing with this for 30, double, then it got to restand. Then once that happened, you got to either chain more together because they only required a 5 or higher to evolve on top of, or you could go into the ultimate, which if you went into the ultimate, you just automatically won. And the way you did that was on the swing with him, you would bean, take a life, and untap that 1 energy. So you were able to kill people in your turn 1 with this deck relatively easily. There was also versions that didn't even play like this big guy large chain that basically ran all the same cards, but you should get shit to play the 2-cost crit Trunks GT, and then you use Grand Tour Spaceship or your 4th Shugesh to go into Fearless Pan to give them all double strike. So you would end up making 3 to 4 guys who were double strike crit that would swing on your opponent again during the format where the leaders didn't have self-awakening, you only woke at 4 or less, you didn't have energy untapping when you were awakening, and you didn't draw cards on the front side, so you didn't even have additional advantage. So someone going 20 double strike crit 4 times was pretty devastating. And then of course you had Overwhelms to help finish this off. Once this deck came out, a lot of people got really afraid if you didn't know what you were doing or you didn't open the negate or whatever, you just got folded and you died. Unless you were also playing a deck, in which case you had access to Shugesh, Kid Goku to get you out the situation on top of negates. Alright, so people were afraid of this version, but there was 2 other versions that came up at the same time. The second one, which was pretty successful, and I couldn't find a whole laid out list for you guys, so I'm sorry about that. But it was Mecha Frieza Veggies. What it did was it leveraged the power of Saiyan Teamwork with Shugesh to be able to create wide board states for the free. So you would take all your life down, you would awaken, you would swing with Mecha Frieza, draw a card, Shugesh into play a Kaba. Kaba will get you usually a Kefla, and then if you had another Shugesh, you could just Shugesh again into another Kaba to get you another card or add a Kel to your hand or something. But once you had out a Kaba and a Kefla, then you had the ability to Shugesh into play Kels, which were devastating, especially to the GT deck. If you Shugesh into play Kel, you usually just dealt with their entire board at once. So this deck was pretty powerful, but none of them were the absolute juggernaut and animal that was Mecha Frieza Apes. This deck was by far the most dominant deck in the game at the time. And there's people who would try to tell you, no, GT was way better than this, or no, Veggies was way cooler than this. They all lost to this deck. This deck was absolutely brutal. And the reason was because it had all the offense, it had a mechanic that was new at the time, which was Barrier. It had better combo power than any other deck. And if you aggressed against it, not only did you have all these blockers here, which were these apes, but you also have Flying Nimbus, which this deck was the only one of the 3 variants that could reliably cast it, since the requirement to pitch a yellow card was a thing. So the way this deck kind of worked was same as ever. You took life, you grabbed, guys and cards and all that stuff, and you Shugeshed into play this King Vegeta. After, you did that, you got 5-drop King Vegeta. Then from there, you would objection, you would pass your turn, your opponent would, do their thing, whatever. Usually it was like play Majin Buu and pass, because attacking you at 15 was suicide. You would then march on turn 2, and you would play 2 big old apes. And then on turn 3, you got into big King Vegeta. And at that point, the game was over. You had a crit attacker, double striker, a 25k double striker, I believe he was. And then you had unbreakables because the 5-drop King Vegeta made everything you comboed that was a Saiyan cost 1 less to combo. So these guys were additional for super combos on top of your Shugesh. You have Mass Saiyan, which if it was ever stuck in your hand, you could always just combo it for the free. You had access again to Cold Bloodlust. You had access to Bean. There's access to Shugesh Kid Goku. So all in all, this deck was basically the best deck that you could have built with the card pool at the time for this leader. So of course, once you had like a little bit of time with this being out here and literally dominating, like if you were playing something other than Mecha Frieza, you were not playing the game. They decided to give it an errata. So this card is not banned, it is errata, and the errata is pretty hurtful, but I still think there's room for this deck here and there. But now you could only activate these extra cards on your opponent's turn, and when you do, you take a life, and it still has the reducing effect, but then it has on the front side that if you add a card to your life, negate that skill for the turn. So you're only able to do one extra card per turn on your opponent's turn on the front side. Then on the back side, it's still during the opponent's turn, but it's not once per turn on the back side. This was the true terror of the set 3 format that they allowed to exist, even though people kind of knew it was going to happen ahead of time. So that is it for this episode of Why Was It Banned Errata'd Limited with Mecha Frieza. So I'll see you again next time, where we'll be talking about other cards that contributed to the degeneracy of the game in the early days and was banned, errata, and limited for our safety. See you again next time. VG Time signing out.